What's going on, everybody? It's Matt with another episode of Back to the Basics. Today we are talking about bowstrings and how often and when you should replace them and some critical signs that you want to look for. So if I were to generalize it, how often they should be replaced, a lot of that typically is based on how often you shoot your bow and the kind of maintenance you do every single year for it. That means like general waxing, the conditions you store it, and all that kind of stuff. But if I was to summarize it, I would say every 3 to 5 years, 5 years being the absolute maximum. So if you've owned a bow, your bow, and you haven't replaced the strings and you've owned it for more than 5 years, no questions asked, it is time to replace the strings. Now, before we get into some symptoms or signs of when you should replace them, things to look for, the reason you want to put a new set of strings and cables on each bow or your bow is because of the fact that these are under extreme amount of tension on vertical bows especially, where they are continuously stretching. Now, the materials are getting better and better every single year. They're coming up with, things that help eliminate that, but you still got to realize that under the attention that these things are on and under the storage that you put them through and how well you maintain them, what happens is as they stretch, the axle to axle length and then the brace height and the tuning and the timing of the cams can all become affected by that. So it's basically like your car engine, if you think about it that way. If you don't change the oil every 3,000 miles, your engine is not going to perform as well as it could, and then things could seriously start happening worse, like maybe you run out of oil, and or it's like not doing a routine maintenance on the engine after so many thousands of miles. So bowstrings are no different, and we need to think of them in that way as well. So what I mean by that is after things stretch, the timing and the ability to shoot a good arrow and your speed is also affected. So as the cam synchronization, not so much on a solo cam, but on a dual cam bow, as the cam synchronization happens, the cams don't rotate or move at the same amount of speed. So then your tuning or your timing of your bow is off, which can affect how the arrow flies off the rest and or your center point on your bow as well. So yeah, without getting into the, a whole lot more of that kind of stuff, those are good questions to ask archery technicians here at The Real Shot. Let's go over some things you want to look for. So we summarize it really quickly. If you've owned your bow for 5 years or more and you have not replaced the strings and or cables on them, now's the time to do it. The thing you also want to do is you want to replace them together. So if you're going to do the string, you might as well do the cables and or cable at that time, so everything is back to spec and back to brand new. So here on this bow here, some things we're looking for is just general wear. So whoever had this bow beforehand did not take care of it by waxing it. You can see, and I always call these kind of cat whiskers, but what happens is the string material starts to fray, starts to separate a little bit, and you get these fuzzies on them. So now, typically, some good waxing will help eliminate that, but after a certain point, even waxing is not gonna help smooth those out and condition those string fibers anymore. So that's one thing to look for. Some other areas you want to look for are the high tension points, which would be the cam tracks, top and or bottom. And what you're looking for here are either some nicks, some frays, broken strands, things like that, or like you can see here on this Matthews, we have some serving separation, which is happening. Now what you got to remember is the serving on the top and bottom portions of the cams or around cable guards, things like that, string stops, are protecting the actual fibers of the bow. So if you have some separation here, you're putting direct wear and tear on the string, which is going to jeopardize the string life and everything like that. So on this bow here, we have a couple areas of concern on the bottom cam. We have some separation starting on the top portion of the cam. And then if we flip it over and we look in here on the cable, there's some separation happening. So if I see that kind of stuff, no matter if it's a 2-year-old string or a year-old string, if it's improperly built, that's an area of concern. I'm going to take it to my bow shop and I'm going to have a look at it right away. So the other area is here. Most bows now are having some roller guards like this. There's some serving separation happening in there. So those are some areas that you want to look for. Around peep sights, if things get nicked, anytime a string or a cable gets nicked, you want to replace it. You are just working with a ticking time bomb and you're gambling with your life and or a limb. So if you see a nick or a cut strand or anything like that, do not shoot that bow. Get that bow into your local pro shop and or The Real Shot and have it looked at just to make sure. You're probably gonna wanna replace that. So that's on a solo cam bow here. We looked at some other areas. Now this is an older model bow. This may be a little bit extreme, but we also have some serving separation going on top and bottom. And the other thing too is as the bow stretches, the twists come out of the strings as well. So what happens when the twist comes out, the timing, the axle and all that stuff comes out as well. It gets out of tune basically. But if you can take your fingers on your bow and you can start to separate strands on either the cables or the strings, again, that is time. It is time to get your bow into the reel shot and have a new set of string and cables put on. So these are some basic things that you should be looking for when you're identifying if it's your own bow, or a friend's bow. If you start to see these things going on, it's a real good time to get that stuff into the reel shot and have it identified and get it in rotation so you can get some new strings and cables put on it. If you have any questions, make sure to contact the reel shot, or you can send us a Facebook message and we'll direct you in the right message or in the right way to go with that. But again, this is Matt. We just covered strings and cables on a vertical bow and how often and when you should replace them. Thanks so much for watching and have a great rest of the day.